All right, in this video, we are looking at rows C and D on your worksheet. So we're looking at these equations that involve squaring that exponent of 2, and we are looking at slightly different types of examples in this one. So let's go ahead and look at row C. We have this equation right here, -2, and then the quantity, or in parentheses, x minus 6 squared is equal to -242. And I am remembering that we are working on order of operations, but in reverse. We're going in the reverse order because we are working backwards and undoing those operations to solve the equation. And then in order to undo, we are looking at opposites. Okay, so let's look at this first example. Let's see what we have as far as order of operations goes. So when we have this -2 out front, remember -2, when it's just written next to a set of parentheses or it's written next to a variable, it means we are multiplying. And then we also have an exponent of 2, and we have our parentheses. So that's the order that we need to work backwards. We need to start with that multiplication. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. Let's see what we have. To undo that multiplication of -2, I need to do the opposite, and I need to divide by -2. Remember, you divide by the same thing because -2 divided by -2 is 1. So that will cancel out. And then over here, I'm going to divide by -2 as well. So then what I have left is x minus 6 squared is equal to, and then I'm just going to do this on my calculator, 242. -242 divided by -2 is a positive 121. And then I'm going to deal with the exponent of 2. And to undo that, I'm going to take the square root. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. Now the square root of 121 is 11, but we know that it is also -11. And then the square root and the square cancel. That's why we do it. We're undoing that. And we're left with x minus 6 is equal to -11, and x minus 6 is equal to positive 11. Now at this point, we just need to solve each equation. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides and get x is equal to -5. And over here, add 6 to both sides, and I get x is equal to 17. Those are my two answers. Now, like we talked about in the last video, it's a good idea to check and make sure that our answer is correct. So I'm going to take this -5. Okay. Now when you're checking it, you go ahead and you do order of operations in the actual order because we're evaluating, we're finding the answer. So I'm going to take that -5, and it says to do -6, and I get -11. Then it says to square that, so I'm going to take it times itself, and I get 121, and then it says to take it times -2, and I get -242. So that answer's right. Then I'm going to go ahead and check 17 the same way. 17 minus 6, 11. Times 11 is 121. Times -2 is -242. So with a calculator, it's really pretty fast to check your work, so we might as well do that. Okay, at this point, go ahead and pause the video, try this example, and then when you have completed it, press play to check your work. Okay, on this one, first thing I'm going to get rid of is this multiplication, so I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And then I'm left with x plus 7 squared is equal to 25. Now I go to the exponent, and to undo that, I square root it. So to undo squaring, you square root. And the square root of 25 is 5. And it's also -5. Square root and square cancel over here. So I have x plus 7 is equal to -5. Over here I have x plus 7 is equal to positive 5. Then I solve each of these equations. -7, -7. So x is equal to -12. And over here, x is equal to negative 2. And let's not forget, we can quickly use a calculator to check our answers. So we're going to take the negative 12, plug it in here, negative 12 plus 7, negative 5, square that, get 25, and then times 3, 75. Take our other answer of negative 2, plug it in, negative 2 plus 7, positive 5, square that, 25 times 3, 75. Okay, at this point, pause the video and try the example on your own. When you're done, press play, and we will go to the last row in the table. Okay, let's look at this last row. These are the most complex type of equations we're going to see that involve squaring. So I am looking at this first equation, and I am noticing multiplication. The 3 is being multiplied. I am noticing parentheses and exponents. I am noticing subtraction. So I have to undo all of these things. And to undo, we go ahead and do the opposite. So let's tackle this one. I'm actually going to, okay, so in this one, we are going to get rid of the minus 5, the subtraction, by doing the opposite and adding 5. So then we are left with 3 times x plus 2 squared is equal to 27. Now notice every time I do something in the equation, I rewrite it. I just want to do one step at a time. It's pretty complex, so I want to keep things as organized as possible. Now to get rid of the 3 being multiplied, I do the opposite and I divide. And then, because remember, positive 3 divided by positive 3 is 1, so those cancel out. So now what I'm left with is x plus 2 squared is equal to 9. Now I have to deal with the exponent. So to get rid of squaring, I take the square root on both sides. Then the square root of 9 is 3 and negative 3. So at this point, I'm splitting it into those two equations. And then over here, the square root and the square root cancels. So I'm left with x plus 2 is equal to negative 3. And x plus 2 is equal to positive 3. Then I solve each of those. Minus 2 on both sides. I get x is equal to negative 5. Minus 2 on both sides of this one. And I get x is equal to 1. Okay, at this point, like we've been doing, I'm going to go ahead and check my work. With a calculator, it's pretty fast. So I plug in my negative 5. Negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3, positive 9. Then I take it times the 3 on the outside. And then I do my minus 5. And 22, that's what I wanted. Now I do the same thing with 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So I did the inside. I squared it. Now I take it times this 3 on the outside. 27 minus 5, boom, 22. So that those answers were correct. You know the routine. Pause the video, try this problem, then press play to check. Okay, on this one, the first thing I'm going to undo is this addition. So I'm going to do minus 10 on both sides. And I'm going to have 2 times x minus 1 squared is equal to 128. Then I'm going to undo the multiplication, this 2. So to undo that, I'm going to divide by 2. And I get x minus 1 squared is equal to 64. Now my next step is to undo the squaring. So to undo that, I square root it. The square root of 64 is 8. Remember, if I want to check that on my calculator, square root button. But we also need to have a negative 8. And then the square root and the square here cancel. So I'm left with x minus 1 being equal to negative 8. And x minus 1 being equal to positive 8. And then here I'm going to add 1, and get x is equal to -7. Here, add 1, x is equal to 9. Then I should go ahead, take my answers, plug them in for x. And I will let you go ahead and try that and make sure that it is in fact 138 that we get when we plug in -7 and we plug in -9. And then after that, go ahead and do this last example, and then we'll call it a day.